The Drovic Syndicate was one of the oldest alien powers in the galaxy. They controlled many star systems and had ruled for hundreds of years. Their laws were harsh. Their punishments were cruel, and they did not like when outsiders entered their space. Most species feared them. Most followed their rules without question. But then two young human cadets made a small mistake that would change everything. The patrol had started like any other. The cadets were both young and eager. One was named Elias, the other was Rin. They were part of a training mission far from Earth, learning how to chart safe paths through deep space. Their ship was small, with only the two of them on board. Their job was simple: scan the stars, check for strange activity, and report back. Nothing dangerous, just practice. But deep space is full of borders that are not always clear. One moment, the cadets were in neutral space. The next, their ship crossed into a place marked as disputed territory. There were no warning signs, no patrols, nothing to tell them to turn around. They didn't even know they had entered Drovic space. They were too busy running tests and fixing a small engine glitch. By the time they noticed a change in the readings, it was too late. A Drovic cruiser appeared out of nowhere. It was large and dark, with strange markings on its wings. Before the cadets could say a word, their ship was pulled in by a powerful energy beam. Elias tried to send a signal home. Rin reached for the emergency beacon, but the Drovic scrambled everything. The message didn't get out. They were alone. When the cadets were brought aboard the Drovic ship, they were not treated like guests or even like prisoners of war. They were treated like invaders. The guards wore cold armor and never spoke a word. The hallway smelled of metal and dust. The floor was sticky. Everything felt wrong. Elias tried to explain. He said they were trainees. He said it was a mistake. Rin stayed quiet, trying to stay calm. She had always been the more careful one. She had studied alien customs. She knew the Drovic were known for being cruel, but nothing could have prepared her for what happened next. The two cadets were led into a wide-open room. Bright lights hung from above. The floor was made of sharp gray stone. In the center was a small stage. Around the room, dozens of Drovic officers stood silently. Some held weapons, some just watched. No one spoke. The Drovic commander stepped forward. His face was long and pale. His eyes were cold and dark. He looked at Elias and Rin as if they were bugs under glass. "You entered our space without permission," he said flatly. "That is a crime." Elias tried again. "It was a mistake, we didn't know." But the commander raised his hand. A guard stepped forward and pushed Elias to his knees. "No trial, no questions," the commander said. "We do not forgive intruders." Then, before anyone could move, the guard lifted his weapon and fired. The sound echoed through the chamber, a single sharp blast. Elias fell. Blood splashed onto the floor. His body crumpled at Rin's feet. His eyes were still open, frozen in shock. Rin screamed. She dropped to her knees beside him, hands shaking. She pressed her palms to his chest, but there was nothing she could do. He was gone, just like that. The Drovic guards laughed. It was not a loud laugh. It was quiet, cruel, and heartless. They thought it was funny. A human had died and they smiled. Rin was dragged away. She didn't fight. She couldn't. Her heart was broken. Her mind was frozen. Her hands were still wet with her friend's blood. She didn't even realize that she was screaming until the guards threw her into a cold, dark room and locked the door. They didn't care who she was. They didn't ask for her name. They didn't know what she was capable of. And they didn't know what Earth would do next. The Drovik thought no one would notice. They thought no one would care. In their minds, humans were just another weak species, easy to scare, easy to push around. They didn't know the truth. Because while the Drovik laughed, the galaxy was watching. And Earth was listening. Back home in a quiet command center hidden deep below the surface of the planet, a small red light blinked. Then it turned off. The emergency signal from the cadet ship had tried to get through. The signal was weak, broken, and short, but it was enough. Enough to raise eyebrows, enough to start questions. Where were the cadets? What had happened? At first, no one knew, but Earth's systems were fast. Their scanners could dig deep. And when the last known location of the ship was traced, alarm bells began to ring. It wasn't a common flight path. It wasn't a normal border. It was near Drovik space. Suddenly, things got very quiet at the command center. Leaders met in small rooms. Messages were sent to secret teams. Old names were spoken again. Names that hadn't been heard since the last time Earth had gone to war. Because when a human is taken, Earth remembers. And when a human is killed, Earth responds. It didn't matter that Elias was young. It didn't matter that he was still learning. What mattered was that he was one of theirs, a child of Earth. And he had died alone, far from home, with no warning and no chance. The news spread slowly at first. Quiet whispers between ships, rumors in trade ports, stories told in space stations. A Drovik cruiser had caught 2 human cadets. One had been executed. The other had disappeared. No reason was given. No word from the Drovik leaders, just silence. But silence is never empty. Silence is loud when it comes after a crime. People across the galaxy began to notice. Aliens who had once fought beside humans started asking questions. Traders who had worked with Earth began pulling their ships away from Drovik territory. Scientists refused to share data. Messages stopped. Trust faded. And then something strange happened. A small probe shaped like a silver seed was found floating near a Drovik station. It wasn't dangerous. It didn't explode. It simply broadcast one message again and again. We saw what you did. Nothing more, just that. The Drovik officers who found it laughed at first, but inside they felt something shift. A chill, a warning. And on Earth, in a quiet room full of shadows, a woman watched the feed from the probe. Her eyes were wet. Her hands were still. She had trained the cadets. Elias had called her captain. Now she had one goal left. The Drovik had taken someone from her. She would take everything from them. The Drovik guards didn't know what was coming. They didn't think about the future. They had done this many times before. They had taken others. They had hurt many. And the galaxy had always moved on. That's what they expected this time too. But humans are not like the others. In the days that followed, something changed in the air around Drovik stations. Ships that used to arrive daily now stayed away. Communication slowed. Supplies were delayed. Even simple fuel shipments stopped showing up. The Drovik still didn't care. They thought it was just trade trouble, nothing more. But deep in their systems, something had entered. Small, silent programs began to move. They were not from Drovik space. They did not match any known code. These programs didn't break things. They didn't set off alarms. Instead, they watched. They copied. They listened. Every message sent. Every file stored. Every log of what had happened that day, all of it was quietly pulled and sent somewhere else. And back on Earth, a quiet room filled with screens began to shine. Now the truth was clear. There were recordings. The cameras in the Drovik ship had not been turned off. The guards had been proud. They had filmed the moment Elias was killed. They had uploaded it to a private network, thinking it would never be found. But Earth found it. The moment played in silence, over and over again. The cadet fell, his blood spread, Rin screamed, and the Drovik laughed. One by one, Earth's leaders watched, scientists, soldiers, commanders, families. And none of them looked away. A quiet rage began to grow. Across Earth, people who had once fought wars came back to work. Old teams reformed. Quiet minds that had once built peaceful tools began building something else, not for revenge, not for hate, for justice. Because humans do not forget their own, and they never leave someone behind. Back in Drovik space, the girl they didn't shoot was still alive. Rin sat in a small metal cell. The room had no window. The light blinked on and off. She was given water but not food. She was not allowed to speak. When she tried to ask questions, the guards ignored her. When she asked for her friend's body, they laughed again. Rin was not just any cadet. She had grown up on Luna Base, the moon's largest human colony. Her mother was one of the best engineers Earth had ever known. She built the engines that carried ships through warped tunnels. Her father was a former soldier, now a teacher of survival skills. Together, they raised Rin to be strong, smart, and calm under pressure. When she joined the training program, she was already known for being brave and focused. Elias, the boy who died, was just as special. He had come from a small farming world called Haven 4. People there were known for being tough and kind. His older brother was a commander in Earth's outer defense fleet. His aunt led a team of diplomats who worked with alien worlds. Even his grandfather had once worked on peace talks during the Mars Accords. Elias came from a family that knew how to serve and protect others. But the Drovik didn't care about that. They didn't ask who he was. They didn't try to understand. They only saw a human ship in their space. To them, that was enough to kill. They had no idea what they had done. Because when they ended Elias' life, they didn't just harm one boy. They hurt a family that touched many parts of Earth. They caused pain that reached far and deep. Back on Haven 4, Elias' home turned cold. His parents didn't speak for days. His brother, the commander, stopped all communication with his unit. His aunt left her job at the Peace Center and sent a private message to Earth's leaders. It was only 3 words. They killed Elias. That message spread faster than light. The training center where Rin had studied closed its doors that day. Her teachers sat in silence. The head instructor, a retired general named Olan, stood in front of the large class hall. His voice broke when he spoke. "We lost one of our own today," he said. "He was brave, he was good, and he was taken too soon." On Luna Base, Rin's mother stared at the stars for hours. She didn't cry. She just sat in her workshop, surrounded by parts of ships she had built, and listened to the recording from Rin's last mission. It was only static now, broken and unclear, but she played it again and again. She wanted to hear her daughter's voice one last time. The pain didn't stop there. Across the galaxy, humans who knew Elias or Rin began to speak out. Some were teachers, some were friends. Others had only met them once or twice. But they all remembered something: a kind word, a smile, a joke, a helping hand. These two cadets had made people feel safe and seen. They had made the galaxy a little brighter. And now that light was gone. Earth Space Council met in private. The group was small, made up of 12 people from different parts of the planet and its colonies. They had power. They had knowledge. But most of all, they had loss. One of them was a cousin of Rin. Another had trained Elias in flight school. All of them had felt the touch of these young lives. In that meeting, there was no shouting, no anger, just silence. Then the chairwoman of the council, a calm woman named Myra Voss, spoke. "The Drovik have forgotten who we are," she said. "They think we are soft. They think we will walk away. But this boy they killed, he had family, he had friends. And the girl they hold, she is not alone." The council voted that day. Not for war, not for revenge, but for a response. One that would shake the stars. News of Elias' death spread to old soldiers who had long since retired. One was General Carter, who had led the defense of Europa during the Ice Wars. He had once promised never to return to the battlefield. But when he heard what happened, he stood up, put on his coat, and sent a message to Earth Command. "If you need me, I'm ready." Another was Ada Lynn, a hacker who had helped stop the alien virus that once threatened Earth's energy systems. She had lived in silence for years, working in quiet labs. But when she saw Elias' name in the news, she opened her old files. Then she wrote one sentence in her secure notebook: "They chose the wrong boy." Even young people felt it. Kids in schools on Mars wore ribbons in memory of Elias. Students in orbiting academies sent messages of support to Rin's family. Even children who had never met either of them drew pictures of starships and heroes, saying, "We believe in you." Across the stars, a soft wave of grief was rising, but it was not a weak thing. It was strong, it was sharp, and it was coming from every corner of human space. You see, humans are not made to forget. They carry their stories. They remember their pain. And when one of their own falls, they all feel it. That is what makes them dangerous. Not their weapons, not their size, but their hearts. Rin's uncle, a man named Dorian Black, was a high-level advisor for Earth's Deep Security Division. He had always watched her progress with pride. Now he studied reports day and night. He ordered teams to scan Drovik space for signs of movement. He called in every favor he had. And when asked why he was doing all this, he said one thing: "She's still out there, and she's my niece." In a small mining colony on Titan, where Elias once visited during training, the workers held a moment of silence. The foreman, a tough man named Brask, had only met Elias once, but he still remembered the boy's smile. He was good, Brask said. Real good, didn't deserve this. Even aliens who had once fought humans now sent quiet messages to Earth. A Dralt ambassador named Zev, who had once signed a peace treaty with Elias' brother, offered his condolences. He was polite. He was curious. He wanted peace. I am sorry. The Drovik had thought no one would care. They thought this death would be just another number. But they were wrong. They had taken someone important, and not just because of who he was related to or what he could become. Elias was important because he was human, and in human hearts that meant something. It meant everything. Rin, still locked in her cell, had no idea all this was happening. She didn't know her name was being spoken across planets. She didn't know her story was being shared in classrooms, in meetings, in homes. She didn't know that her face, once just a cadet, was now a symbol. But she felt it. She felt it in her bones. She knew she had to live, not just for herself, but for him. For Elias. The Drovik guards still checked on her, thinking she was weak. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know she came from a line of survivors. They didn't know she had memorized every sound in her hallway, every guard's routine, every code typed into the wall pad. They didn't know who she really was. Back on Earth, a message was finally sent to the Drovik leaders. It was short, calm, and clear. You took one of ours, you hold another. This will not stand. There was no answer. The Drovik still believed they were in control. But things were already moving. Ships had left Earth's orbit. Satellites had shifted. And in quiet labs, new plans were forming. Because Elias was not just a boy, and Rin was not just a girl. They were part of something bigger, something the Drovik could never understand. They were human. And Earth remembers its own. The Drovik did not hear the warning, or maybe they did, but they laughed. To them, humans were soft. Humans were slow. Humans would cry but never fight back. The Drovik had ruled their space for many years. They had taken what they wanted and pushed others away. They believed nothing would change, but they were wrong. The first thing to disappear was a small Drovik scout ship. It had been flying near the edge of human space. No one saw what happened. One day it was there, and the next it was gone. No signal, no message, just silence. The Drovik called it a mistake. They said it had run into space dust or broken parts. They told their people not to worry. But someone on the ship had sent a short message before it vanished. It only said 2 words, "They're coming." Then something strange happened at a Drovik station in Sector 5. It was a big place, full of supplies and workers. Ships came and went all the time. But one morning everything stopped working. The doors would not open. The lights went out. The air systems froze. People ran around, confused and scared. For 3 hours the station could not move, send signals, or even turn on backup power. When it finally came back on, nothing was missing. No one had attacked, but all the files were gone. Every order, every map, every password erased. No one laughed anymore. Another Drovik station found that all their food was spoiled. The lights in the cold rooms had stayed off for just long enough to ruin everything. And somehow, their cameras had not recorded who did it. No alarms had gone off. The food was just ruined. A mining ship sent to get fuel vanished next. This time they found the wreck. The ship was torn open, but there were no blast marks, no signs of fire. It looked like it had been pulled apart from the inside. One message had been scratched into the metal before the ship broke apart. It read, "For Elias." The Drovik leaders began to meet in secret. They asked questions. Who was doing this? Was it the humans? Were they using new weapons, new ships? But nothing had been seen. No fleets, no fighters, just small things, quiet things. And that made it worse. The Drovik were used to big battles. They knew how to stop armies. They had large ships and strong shields. But now they were being hit by shadows. Nothing to shoot at. No one to chase, just fear. One Drovik commander ordered his guards to stay alert. But the next day, the lights in their room all blinked at the same time, and every guard fell asleep without warning. When they woke up, their weapons were missing and someone had written on the wall, "One step closer." On a Drovik world near the edge of their space, people began to panic. Shops closed, schools were empty, workers stayed home. Rumors spread fast. They said humans had sent ghosts. They said the humans could walk through walls and control machines. They said no place was safe. The Drovik government tried to stop the fear. They put out messages. They said, "The humans are weak. They are scared. They can do nothing to us." But even as they spoke, more strange things happened. A water station turned to steam overnight. A fighter ship fell from the sky without being hit. A building filled with guards collapsed in the middle of the night. No wind, no fire, just down it went. And always, always, the same message appeared. For Elias. Back on Earth, the people didn't cheer. They didn't shout. They didn't sing songs of victory. Instead, they kept working. The teams in secret bases sent messages to each other. They planned each move. They picked targets that hurt the Drovik most but did not take lives. This was not about hate. This was about justice. One hacker named Ada, the woman who had once hidden from the world, now led the digital attacks. She found old Drovik codes. She broke into their systems. She showed other teams where to go and what to change. She never spoke much, but when she did, her voice was cold. "I will not stop until she's home." She meant Rin, the girl still trapped in a cell far from Earth. A group of ex-soldiers who had once fought in asteroid battles came back to help. They were older now, with gray hair and slow knees, but they knew how to fly. They made silent ships with soft engines and black walls. They flew them close to Drovik space, hiding just out of sight. And from there, they waited. They watched for signals from Rin. They listened to Drovik patrols. And when the time was right, they struck. But they never killed. They took engines apart without anyone knowing. They made Drovik shields fall for just 1 minute. They dropped small machines that recorded every word spoken in Drovik command rooms. And still, the Drovik did not understand. They kept looking for a big army. But there was none. only humans with quiet hands and loud hearts. Even Rin, still locked in her cell, noticed the change. The guards were nervous. They talked in whispers. One of them dropped a tray of food because his hands were shaking. Another stared at the wall for too long, as if waiting for something to come through it. Rin smiled. She didn't know everything that was happening, but she knew one thing. Her people were coming, and the Drovik were starting to feel it. In a deep space station where Drovik money was kept, something strange took place. The computers said everything was fine, but the money numbers began to change. Slowly, bit by bit, the credits moved. At first, no one noticed. But then someone saw that all the Drovik leaders now had zero in their accounts. All their wealth had gone. It had not been stolen. It had been sent back to Earth. Not for use. Just to prove a point. You are not safe, the message said. We see you, we remember. The Drovik leaders began to fight among themselves. They blamed each other. They said, "You were supposed to stop this." Or, "You said humans wouldn't fight back." One leader broke a screen with his fist. Another left the planet and hid in an old spaceport. Trust was gone. And still the humans came. Not in crowds. Not with guns. But with silence and fire. More Drovik ships found their engines frozen. A group of guards walked into a room and found their armor had melted, but nothing else had been touched, not even the chairs, just their armor. For Elias, the wall said again. Some Drovik started to run. They left their jobs. They dropped their weapons. They said, "I won't fight them, I won't be next." The human plan was working. Each quiet act, each silent strike sent a message. We have not forgotten. We are not afraid. And we are not done. The Drovik thought they could scare Earth. But Earth was not scared. Earth was moving. And this was only the beginning. At first, the Drovik leaders thought the small problems were nothing. They believed the humans were just trying to be annoying. A few lost ships, a few shut down stations, it didn't seem like a big deal. They had faced rebellions before. They had crushed uprisings in other systems. They were sure they could do the same again. But they were wrong. Something was different this time. Very different. One high-ranking Drovik general named Karvex sat in his private office. He was known for being smart and strict. He had led many battles and always won. His mind was sharp. He didn't believe in fear, but now even he was confused. He looked at the new reports on his screen. One report showed a patrol ship that had simply stopped working in deep space. The crew was still alive, but the ship's power had vanished. They had drifted in the dark for hours before help came. Another report showed that a mining station had been emptied overnight. The workers were gone. There were no signs of a fight, no blood, no damage, just empty beds and half-eaten meals, all of them gone without a trace. Karvex tapped his fingers on the desk. This wasn't random. He could feel it. There was a pattern. The attacks were slow, careful, and clean. Whoever was doing this was watching, listening, and planning every step. He called a meeting with other Drovik commanders. When they came into the room, he looked around. Many of them seemed tired. Some looked nervous. These were not weak men. These were proud leaders of the empire. but they all had seen the same strange things. Karvek stood up and said, "This is not a small rebellion. This is not just random damage. We are being hunted." The room was silent. Then one commander, a woman named Rivla, nodded. "My ships have stopped working in 3 different places," she said. "Every time the backup systems failed too, and then the power came back on as if someone was watching us." Another general added, "Our supply chains are breaking. Fuel shipments do arrive. Food rots in storage, and our transport codes keep getting changed. Only humans have that kind of code skill." The Drovic leaders began to worry. These attacks weren't loud, they weren't big, but they were fast and smart. The humans weren't trying to fight a war. They were doing something worse. They were shaking the Drovic from the inside. More reports came in every hour. On one small planet, a training camp for new Drovic soldiers found that all their weapons had melted into puddles. Not exploded, melted. No one had seen anyone enter. No one had seen anyone leave. But someone had been there, and they had made a point. On another planet, a Drovic factory was covered in writing overnight. The words glowed in red. They said, "We see you. We are near." The guards didn't see who did it. Cameras caught nothing. It was like the wind had written it. Karvex rubbed his eyes. He hadn't slept well in weeks. His people kept asking him for answers. The Drovic citizens were scared. Some thought ghosts were doing it. Others thought humans had found dark magic. No one had seen any human ships. That made it worse. People are afraid of what they can't see. In the capital city of the Drovic Empire, a strange thing happened. A statue of the emperor cracked down the middle and fell apart during the night. The guards swore no one had touched it. It had stood for over 100 years. But now it was gone. In its place was a new statue, made of parts from broken Drovic ships. It showed a human cadet standing with her arms crossed, staring forward. Everyone knew who it was. It was Rin. She had become a symbol of what the Drovic had done, a symbol of what the humans would not forget. Karvek started to think about her. The girl had only been a cadet, just a student. She hadn't even finished her training, but the Drovic had taken her. They had used her as a message, and now that message was returning to them like a storm. One by one, Karvex opened old files on his computer. He searched for every report that mentioned Rin, her ship, and her team. He found old video clips, audio logs, and scanned photos. He listened to her voice in one file. She had been talking to her team during training. She had laughed, joked, and said she loved learning about the stars. Now, because the Drovic had hurt her, the stars were turning against them. Karvex leaned back in his chair. He felt cold. It was not just fear, it was something deeper, something that told him the Empire was changing. Rivla entered his office and placed a small device on the table. "We found this in one of our secure rooms," she said. "It was sending out information, human-made. We don't know how it got there." Karvex picked it up. It was a tiny black cube. He had never seen one like it before. It had no wires, no buttons, just a smooth surface. He pressed one side and it lit up with red writing. "For Elias," it said. That name again. They had seen it before, on wrecked ships, on broken walls, even on food containers that had been found emptied. Always the same message. For Elias. Carvex asked, "Who is Elias?" Rivlash shook her head. "We don't know, but the humans do." In a small room deep below the Drovik military base, a group of scientists were trying to figure out the human plan. They had maps, they had charts, they had long lists of events, but they still didn't understand how humans were moving so fast, staying so hidden, and doing so much without being seen. One scientist stood up and said, "This isn't war, this is art. The humans are painting a picture and we're in it. We just don't know what the picture shows yet." The others stared at him. He was right. The humans weren't rushing. They were building something, something slow and scary. Another scientist added, "It's like they know our steps before we take them, like they've already played this game." The Drovik leaders began to argue. Some wanted to send full armies to human space. Others wanted to make peace before things got worse. But Carvex knew it was too late for talk. The humans weren't sending peace offers. They were sending warnings. And no one knew what would come next. On one moon near the Drovik border, an entire communication center vanished. It didn't blow up. It didn't fall apart. It just disappeared. The only thing left was a small flag planted in the dust. It was Earth's flag. Next to it were 3 words scratched into the ground. "You started this." Carvex stood at the edge of the war room, watching his empire fall apart bit by bit. He opened a map of Drovik space. It showed blinking red lights wherever something strange had happened. There were too many red lights to count now. Too many attacks. Too much fear. He turned to his officers. "This is not just a response," he said. "This is not about one girl. This is about all of them, all the humans we hurt, all the voices we silenced. They are speaking now." No one answered. No one could. The Empire had thought it was strong. But strength meant nothing when the enemy was already inside. When the people you hurt were now the ones writing the future. And the Drovik had no idea how to stop it. Far away from Drovik space, behind the dark edges of known stars, Earth was preparing something big, very big. But no one outside a small group of people knew about it. This plan had been in motion since the day the news of Rin's capture had spread. Earth's leaders had stayed calm in front of cameras. They had spoken with kind voices and used soft words. But behind closed doors, they were building something bold. At the center of the secret plan was a place called Blackstone. It was not on any map. It was hidden inside a dead star system where no light escaped. Old ships from past wars floated around it like bones. These ships made it hard for anyone to find what was inside. But deep in that silent space, Blackstone was alive. It was a hidden base filled with engineers, scientists, soldiers, and minds too sharp for normal work. In the middle of Blackstone stood a large room shaped like a circle. Screens covered the walls. Lights blinked softly. The room was called the Heart. It was where all the secret teams gathered. Inside it, Earth's best minds were working day and night on something called Project Silencer. That was the name of the plan to stop the Drovik without firing a full war. They had learned that the Drovik were proud, loud. They believed no one could stand up to them, but humans had a different way of fighting. Inside Project Silencer were many small teams. One team was full of hackers, people who knew how to break into systems without being seen. They had already done a lot. They had shut down Drovik power stations. They had erased maps. They had sent fake orders to Drovik ships. But they were only the first wave. Another team worked on shadows, small robots shaped like insects. These tiny machines could fly without sound. They could hide in walls, listen to voices, and send messages back to Earth. These bugs had already been placed on Drovik warships in command centers and even inside the prison where Rin was held. These robots gave humans a new kind of power: information. The third team was special. It had no name. Its members had no rank or badge. They were people who had once been spies, thieves, or soldiers from the dark parts of history. Now they were Earth's invisible hand. They traveled in silent ships. They wore armor that bent light. When they moved, even cameras could not see them. These people had one job: to shake the Drovik from the inside. And above them all was the commander. Her name was Hallie Voss. She never smiled. She didn't shout. She was quiet and sharp, like a knife made of thought. She had led many missions before, but this was the biggest one yet. She had been the one to say, "We will not strike loud. We will strike smart." Under her, the teams worked together like parts of a machine. But Project Silencer was only the outside layer. Beneath it was something even more secret. Only 5 people in the galaxy knew about it. Project Ember. While the Silencer teams made the Drovik nervous, Ember was planning what would happen next. It was not about fear. It was not about tricks. Ember was about truth, about justice. It was made to answer one question: how do you break an empire without breaking the stars? The people in Project Ember were different. Some were teachers. Others were artists, builders, or poets. They had come together to build a message so powerful it could stop a war. This message would not be sent with ships or guns. It would be sent through every screen, every speaker, and every star net across the galaxy. They were building a story. It would show what happened to Rin. It would show what the Drovik had done to other races. It would show pain but also hope. And it would ask a question: if they can do this to one, how long before they do it to all? The Ember team had already gathered hundreds of stories from people who had escaped Drovik rule. These stories came from aliens, miners, traders, and even old Drovik who had turned against their own kind. Every story added a new piece to the truth. The truth would be shaped into a kind of fire that could burn through lies. While Ember wrote its story, Silencer struck again. In one Drovik factory, the machines stopped working. The next day, the workers found that every blueprint had been changed. All their plans now made pieces that did not fit. They tried to fix it, but every time they changed the files, the blueprints changed back. It was as if the factory itself had turned against them. In another part of Drovik space, 5 warships flew out to search for humans. They were big, fast ships. But one by one they began to slow down, not from damage, but because the stars around them stopped working. The stars grew cold. The ships froze. When help arrived, the crews were found alive but shaken. They said the stars had whispered to them. That was Silencer again. Using light waves, The team had created sounds from stars. The Drovik ships had picked up the sounds and played them through their systems. The sounds had no words, just deep, slow tones like giant breathing. It made the Drovik believe that space itself had turned on them. Inside Blackstone, Hallie Voss met with her top team. "It's working," one officer said. "Yes," she said, "but it's not enough." She pointed to a map of Drovik space. "We have hit 23 key systems, but they still hold Rin, and the people have not risen. They are afraid, yes, but fear is not enough. We need them to feel something else." "What?" someone asked. Hallie looked at them. "A shame." And that was when Ember moved. Their story was finished. They had written it in over 200 languages. They had added images, videos, and even music. When the Drovik citizens woke up the next day, every screen in their empire showed the same thing: Rin. She was younger in the video. She smiled as she flew a small ship for the first time. She waved to her mom. She talked about her dream to explore the stars and make friends with aliens. Then the video changed. It showed the day she was taken. It showed the Drovik cheering as she was marched through the streets. It showed her scream. It showed the guards laugh. And then it showed the faces of the people who did nothing. The message said, "She was one girl, you watched her suffer. What will you do now?" The Drovik leaders tried to stop the video. They shut down screens. They blocked signals. But the story had already spread to every home, every port, every station. And for the first time, many Drovik felt something they had never felt before.